I call the honourable member Darian Fenton.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I rise to support this bill to Select Committee, and I'm pleased also to hear that there will be a reasonable process and time to consider what is actually is a very, very important bill, but it's also highly technical when it comes to the mining regulations. But I want to start, first of all, Mr Speaker, by noting with sadness again the needless death of the 29 men in that awful tragedy at Pike River Mine. And I know the families will be following this legislation with great interest, but also it will bring up many of the issues for them again. I know their lives have been broken by this tragedy, and I hope that they have a real opportunity to meet with the Select Committee and put forward their views. And in fact, the Select Committee was discussing that this morning, and I think there's a willingness on the Transport and Industrial Relations Select Committee to actually go to them and allow that to happen. The bill establishes WorkSafe, which is a standalone Crown agency for workplace health and safety. As I said, Labor supports it, although we have some reservations which we will want to explore at Select Committee. Secondly, the bill implements the recommendations around an effective regulatory framework for mining and makes major, quite big changes to worker participation in health and safety. We want to see these changes implemented without delay. As I said, the changes to mining are particularly technical, and also, as the Minister observed, consultation on the Safe Mines, Safe Workers is still incomplete, is still carrying on, so that needs to feed into it. It is really important that during the process, the workers who are expert in the field who actually do the jobs, the people that represent them have real input, and those who actually work in mines, quarries and tunnels are heard, and that's why I'm pleased we have more time. This is also the establishment of WorkSafe was also the recommendation of the Independent Task Force on Health and Safety, which was a very comprehensive report, Mr Speaker, and was a consensus report around the need for major change in the approach, in our approach to the health and safety of people at work. One of the things the task force were particularly clear about was the need for tripartite involvement. Very clear about that, and in fact the Minister told the Transport and Industrial Relations Select Committee just 2 weeks ago that the WorkSafe Board would include union representation. But we also know, of course, that the Minister's not that keen because I've seen the Cabinet papers and there was a few ifs, buts and maybes. And when you look at the legislation, Mr Speaker, what we see in Clause 7, the establishment of the board, it says that the Minister must appoint at least 5 but not more than 9 people as members of the board. It talks about the knowledge and experience required, including the public, having experience in the public sector, central government processes, health and safety environment. And then this peculiar phrase, perspectives of workplace participants. Now what the heck does that mean? Is that supposed to be a half-hearted attempt to include workers in their unions? Could the Minister not bring himself to use the U word in this legislation? Because if he really means it when he talks about tripartism, he should be able to use that word, and it should be very clear in this legislation. And of course the clause then goes on to talk about business generally. And the governance arrangements are left in the hands of the Minister. Now, I'm sorry, Mr Speaker, but there's not an awful lot of trust on our side in that Minister, and leaving it in his hands, perspectives of workplace participants could be perspectives of employers. So the committee has to look at that and demonstrate that they have heard the task force, the Health and Safety Task Force, their main recommendation about the importance of tripartism. That means unions, workers, employers and government working together, not excluding them, not saying, oh, they've got some, perspectives of workplace participants. That's a big letdown, and I think there'll be a lot of discussion in the Select Committee about that. Then the functions provided for the WorkSafe agency in the bill are a shadow of those recommended by the task force. The agency has no power to approve codes of practice. There's no role in making or amending regulations. It has no clear lead role in workplace health and safety. It can't make recommendations about the nature of funding. It has no role in fostering tripartism or working with unions. Those are significant gaps in the role of this new agency that will need to be addressed to make this real and to make it work. What I think we're seeing in this bill is a hanging on by that Stephen Joyce monolith, Moby Dick, that awful monolith that was created and was not up to job, and those senior managers who are around when the Pike River mine disaster occurred, who have not been held to account for the decisions that led to that tragedy, and who are desperately trying to cling on to power in that shrinking department. Let's, for goodness sake, get this agency off on the right foot and accept our history. Understand our history and accept it. That the exclusion of workers and workers' organisations in the health and safety changes to legislation in 1992 were a monumental stuff-up, which ultimately led to the tragedies at Pike River and those that continue every week in New Zealand workplaces. Every week people die. And so I found, I was reading subpart 3, which is about the transfer to WorkSafe, and it deals with the transfer of existing employees under Moby to WorkSafe New Zealand. Very interesting, because as I've already pointed out to the Minister today, the numbers of health and safety inspectors will be around half of those we had 2 years ago, and at the lowest level since the late 1940s. That is how far that change program has taken us backwards. And it has been called lifting our game, and whether the Minister likes it or not, the process has been such a botch-up that the inspectors, many of whom have 20 or more years of experience, who have been through restructuring after restructuring, are calling it shifting the blame. And I think that's appropriate because nobody at the management level has been held to account for the mess that led to Pike River Mine. Now, redundancy notices have been issued for some, inspectors are going down the road. Trainees will be taken on to fill the gap. They will be unwarranted trainees, and I'm told that they're going to be expected to do some, and they're going to be expected to do some of the duties of inspectors. Now, that is really, really concerning. Finally, in my last 2 minutes, Mr. Speaker, there's so much in this bill, and we will get a chance to look at it, but I just want to go back to the point that I make again and again to this Minister about work rights and the link between work rights and health and safety, which he does not get. He does not accept, obviously, that the task force has identified that the health and safety problems we have in New Zealand arose from the deregulation of the labour market in the 80s and 90s. That was the beginning of this. And at the same time as we're considering this in the Transport Industrial Select Committee, we're also considering a bill that will cut wages, could force workers to work longer hours, that will cut meals and rest breaks, a fundamental health and safety entitlement of workers. We're going to have a big debate about this bill, but we have what I'd like to see us, as we progress through this, and we all acknowledge how important this is we get to a point, we reach some understanding in this House that health and safety and work rights go hand in hand. You cannot have one without the other, Mr. Speaker, and until this Minister understands that his weakening of employment security and other employment rights will contribute to health and safety problems, our death toll and injury toll in New Zealand is going to continue to escalate. Thank you.
Good speech.
I call the honourable member Chris Ockenbold.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.